Hello everyone, this is Rick. In this episode, we are going to discuss the social reform movements in India. We are going to see how the Indian society in the 19th century was crippled by discrimination and different kind of orthodox rituals. And we are also going to see who were the main players behind the removal of those rituals and correcting the society. So this video is catered according to the syllabus of class 11 of ISC board. The last part of this video also contains question answers. So please carry a notebook with you so that you can note down the important points. So let's begin with our video on social reform movements in India. Now, before we go into details about the movements, here are a few people who did a lot to improve the social condition of people in India, beginning with Mahatma Jyotirao Phule and his social reform efforts. So, who was Jyotirao Phule and how did he contribute to reforming the society? Early life and background. Jyotirao Phule was born in 1827 at Pune in Malakar or florist family. So Jyotirao Phule was born in 1827 at Pune. Pune was the capital of Maharashtra at that point of time, and he was born in a family who worked with flowers, Malakar or florist family. In 1851, he started a girls' school at Pune with his wife, making it a hub of female education. So in 1851, he started a girls' school at Pune and he started it along with his wife, which itself was an act by going against the society. And so one of the first girls' school in India was founded by Jyotirao Phule in Pune. He faced harassment and insult from orthodox society. Orthodox society means one who had old conservative ideas, and he was disowned by his own father and turned out of his home. So his own father told him to get out of his house, and still he was working for women, started a school for depressed class children and promoted widow remarriage. So later on, he started another school where he taught the children who were not from well off families, and he also promoted widow remarriage, another one great act of Jyotirao Phule. Started an anti-Brahmin movement, opposed Brahmins' claim to superiority and divinity. See, Brahmins were the upper caste people in the Hindu society. During the early Vedic time, Brahmins were great scholars, and the caste system was especially based on occupation. But as we went forward, Brahmins became the rule makers of the society, and most of the rules that they made were to favor their own will. So Brahmins became an hinder to progress. Brahmins became an obstruction to progress, and thus he, Jyotirao Phule, had to start Brahmin anti-Brahmin movement in order to oppose Brahmins' claim to superiority and divinity. I am not saying that all Brahmins were bad, but there were a few Brahmins who obstructed the progress, who obstructed modernism in Indian society. He established the Satya Sodhak Samaj and led anti-Brahmin campaign and uplift depressed classes. So he established the Satya Sodhak Samaj to lead a campaign against anti-Brahmin, and thus he was working to uplift the depressed classes. Came to be called Mahatma from 1888. Notable works include Dharma Tritiya Ratna and Life of Shivaji. So these were his notable works in the field of literature. Narayan Guru and the SNDP movement in Kerala. So this was he was another important social reformer from southern part of Indian subcontinent, that is from Kerala. So Narayan Guru's reform in Kerala alongside the Dravidian movement against caste evils. So he mainly fought against the orthodox caste system of India from the province of Kerala, and caste his fight against the orthodox caste system went along with the Dravidian movement. Led the Sri Narayana Dharma Paripalana Yogam to uplift the Eshava caste. So Eshava caste was the caste which belonged to the lowest form of the caste system, means it belonged to the lowest caste, Eshava people. And so he founded an organization named as Sri Narayana Dharma Paripalana, and the main intention of this organization was to uplift the Echava caste. He focused on discarding untouchability towards caste below the Echavas. So Echavas were considered to be untouchables, means higher class people maintained distance from the Echavas. There was huge discrimination. So he focused on disregarding untouchability, promoted building temples and devasthanams for all castes, including the depressed. So he promoted building temples. Now, this SNDP movement should not be confused with anti-Hindu movement. Narayan Guru was a Hindu and he worshipped Narayan, which itself was the highest form of worship in Hinduism. So he wanted to rectify Hinduism. He did not want people to go away from Hinduism. So thus he promoted temples and devasthanams where all castes will come together and pray, including the depressed classes. He advocated simplified rituals for marriage and funerals, rejecting Brahmanical monopoly. So he advocated very simple rituals for marriage because he went against the Brahmins who were the lawmakers. So marriage and funerals had to be with simple rituals, and thus he rejected the monopoly of the Brahmanical order in making the ritualistic customs in Hindu society. He criticized Indian National Congress for neglecting the depressed and the untouchables. So he criticized the Indian National Congress because according to him, Congress was not doing much for the benefit of the lower class people or the lower caste people. His popular quote was, "As juice of all leaves of a tree are same in content, therefore there should be one caste, one religion, one God." Veere Salingam Kandukuri. So he was another caste reformer from the state of Andhra. Born in 16 April 1848 at Rajamundry in a poor Brahmin family, educated at government district school, passed matriculation in 1869. So he himself was from Brahmin family and he was born in 16th April 1848. His education was not private, it was from a district government school. He passed matriculation, which was equal to class 10 exam in 1869. He started the first Brahma Mandir at Rajamundry in 1887. He championed widow remarriage. So he started Brahma Mandir and the intention was to promote widow remarriage. So he did a lot for remarrying the widows. Established Remarriage Association, first widow remarriage conducted on 11 December 1881. So he established the Widow Remarriage Association, whose sole purpose was to for the remarriage of widows. And thus the first widow remarriage happened on 11th December 1881. He founded a girls' school in 1874 and another in 1884 at Rajamundry. So, a girls' school was founded in 1874 in Rajamundry and another girls' school at the same place in 1884. He established the Hitakarini Society, donated all his property to social causes. So, through the Hitakarini Society, he donated everything to social causes. He was awarded Rai Bahadur in 1893 for his reformative contributions. So he gained the title of Rai Bahadur. It was a title given by the Britishers. First Telugu historian and novelist. He translated scientific works. He died on 27th May 1919 at the age of 71. So that was the life and works of Veerasalingam Kandukudi. Movement for the abolition of sati. Now, sati system was a social evil which was going on in India. Sati involved burning Hindu widows on the funeral pyre of their husbands. It was seen as one of the worst social evils on of Indian society. So sati, the system of sati evolved into something very unfortunate and evil. However, it started with the Johar custom in among the Rajputs. So when the Islamic invaders were capturing parts of India starting from the northwest, the Rajput males or the Rajput warriors fought valiantly against the Islamic invaders. And even though they were defeated, their courage was great, and so they were known for their bravery. So when all the male members of a society died, the women, to prevent themselves from falling prey into the hands of the invaders, jumped into fire. This system was called Johar. It was all done to preserve the self respect of women in the Rajput society. However, with evolution of time, this system evolved into an evil form called sati, where a woman was forced to burn in the funeral pyre of their husband. So here is a very good example of how a practical and highly respectable custom becomes or turns into a social evil as we move forward in history. Rulers like Muhammad bin Tughlaq, Akbar, Jahangir, Guru Amar Das, Ahilya Bai, and Peshwas prohibited sati in their domains. So it was not that only Britishers took actions against sati. There were many leaders before the Britishers who prohibited sati in their territories. Before the East India Company acted, the Danes at Serampore, the Dutch at Chinsura, which became to be called as Chuchura, and the French at Chandannagar, which began to be called as Chandannagar, had already prohibited sati. So these were the European prohibitions, the Europeans who acted against sati. In 1772, British officials and missionaries failed to persuade the government to act, fearing offense to native religious sentiments. So many British officials wanted the British government to abolish sati. However, the British government was not that much interested to involve themselves in the ritualistic practices of Hinduism. Keri and others began agitation against sati. He studied the Hindu Shastras at Fort William College and found no scriptural compulsion for sati. So William Carey was a Britisher who was also a social reformer. He did a lot for the establishment of Bengali language. He studied all the Hindu scriptures and said that there is no evidence of sati found anywhere. Carey submitted a memorial to Lord Wellesley urging a ban, but Wellesley took no action. So he submitted his research paper. He submitted a memorial to Lord Wellesley, but Wellesley took no action. Under Minto, limited exceptions were allowed. So Minto partially took action. In 1817, Mrityunjay Vidyalankar, a Sanskrit scholar and Supreme Court Pandit, argued that sati had no Shastric basis and was not compulsory. So Mrityunjay Vidyalankar was the epitome, he was the authority in Sanskrit texts. In 1817, he said that there is no shastric basis, means it is not according to Hinduism. In Hinduism, there is no shastric basis of sati, and thus it should be abolished. That was the argument of Mrityunjay Vidyalankar. Final abolition of sati. So how was sati finally abolished? Rammohan Roy's campaign. He launched a strong agitation against sati, formed a vigilance party, published tracts in 1818 and 1829, and led anti-sati discourse. So he did a lot for the abolition of sati. Raja Rammohan Roy was termed as the first modern man in India, and he fought a lot to abolish sati. So he led a total anti-sati campaign. Orthodox scholar Kashinath Torkovagish opposed Roy. Journals like Sambhat Kaumudi, Samachar Darpan, and Friend of India supported Roy's movement. So there were other parties also who thought to preserve the system of sati, and thus one of the famous person was Kashinath Torkovagish, who opposed Roy, means they supported the system of sati. And the local medias at that time, like Sambhat Kaumudi, Samachar Darpan, and Friend of India, they all supported Roy. And so there was a huge debate going on in the Hindu society. Missionaries gained support in England against sati. So Christian missionaries gained a lot of support in England for the abolishment of sati. Orthodox journal Samachar Chandrika backed its continuation, dividing Bengal's opinion. So there was another Orthodox journal called Samachar Chandrika which was continuously supporting sati, and thus there was a division in the opinion of the Bengalis. Governor General Lord William Bentinck consulted Roy and H. Wilson. Despite concerns, he proceeded with full abolition. So, Governor General at that point of time was Lord William Bentinck. He consulted with Raja Rammohan Roy and many others of the Hindu society. Many Europeans like H. Wilson came forward, and there was concern, but he went forward to abolish sati legally. So on December 4, 1829, Bentinck declared sati illegal and punishable by criminal courts under Regulation 17 of 1829. So a law was published in 1829 December 4, which totally abolished sati. Raja Radhakanta Dev and others petitioned the Governor General and Privy Council. Their plea was dismissed. So their plea was dismissed, and the Orthodox Hindus absolutely lost the case. So abolition marked the triumph of Roy and progressive Bengal. It inspired further social reforms across India. Widow Remarriage Act of 1856, Vidyasagar's contribution. So Iswarchandra Vidyasagar was a great social reformer, scholar and educator in the 19th century who did a lot for the removal of many social evils. One among them, the most important among them, was Widow Remarriage Act of 1856. He did a lot to enact this act. So he was not the first to sympathize with the widows. In mid 19th century, Raja Raja Ballabh of Dhaka tried to marry his widowed daughter but failed due to opposition by Raja Krishna Chandra of Nodia. So Raja Raja Ballabh was the king of Dhaka. Did a lot to get his widowed daughter married, but he failed because another important figure, that is Raja Krishnachandra of Nodia, opposed him. Raja Rammohan Roy had a lot of sympathy for the widows. He did very few things for widow remarriage, but he did not take any concrete steps for Hindu widows remarriage. Now, who was Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar? He was born in 1820. He passed Sanskrit College in 1841 and became its principal in 1851. deeply moved by widow misery. So Ishachandra Vidyasagar was a person who was born in 1820. You can see his life history, and he was deeply moved by the misery of the widows. Vidyasagar wrote a pamphlet in 1855 citing Shastras to prove widow remarriage was valid. It stirred the nation. So he wrote a pamphlet in 1855. He did a lot of research, and he cited quotes from the different Hindu texts to prove that widow remarriage was very much valid and should be done. Maharaja of Bardhaman, Zamindars of Navadvip, Dhaka, Maiman Singh supported it. Petition reached the Legislative Council. So different other members of the Hindu society, important and powerful personalities in Hinduism and in Bengal or in eastern India, they supported Vidyasagar. J.P. Grant led the legislative initiative on July 26, 1856. Act 15 was passed legalizing widow remarriage. So J.P. Grant led the legislative initiative, and on July 26, 1856, through the passing of Act 15, widow remarriage became legal. So Dayanand Saraswati and Arya Samaj led it in North India, Vishnu Parasuram Pandit and Govind Ranade in Western India. These were other famous personalities who spread widow remarriage to different parts of India. Now we will see what is female infanticide and the Infanticide Act of 1870. Historical practice in the West. In ancient Greece, Sparta killed weak babies. Western Europe saw general female infanticide into the 16th and 17th century. Now, female infanticide, the Europeans like to project it as a problem of India only. Yes, it was definitely a problem in India. It was one of the greatest social evils possible in the Indian subcontinent. But it used to happen since ancient times in Europe also. So in places like Greece and Sparta and up to the 16th and 17th centuries in Europe, we find existence of female infanticide. In Orissa and Bengal, some families vowed to sacrifice their firstborn to goddess Ganga if childless for long. So there was a custom in Orissa and Bengal that if a couple did not give birth to baby for a very long time, then their firstborn child will be like dedicated to Ganga, and they will be set afloat in Ganga. And so this was one of the bad custom in Orissa and Bengal. And it was not like every family did that, but some families followed this. It was practiced by Chauhans, Surajbansis, and Vaduriyas among peasants like Jats, Ahirs, Gujrats in Bijnor, Manipuri, etc., Mainpuri, etc., due to dowry. So, when a daughter had to be married, the family of the bride had to pay a lot of money to the family of the groom. This was another evil practice called dowry. So in order to prevent themselves from paying dowry, whenever a woman child was born, whenever a girl child was born, she was killed. So that was the evidence of infanticide among the Rajputs. In 1824 and 1828, British Parliament received reports. British thoroughly investigated the practice. So British Parliament received a lot of reports, and they thoroughly investigated this practice of female infanticide. Female Infanticide Act was passed in 1870. It criminalized infanticide and empowered district authorities. So this act was passed in 1870, and it made the female infanticide punishable by law. It included powers to make rules, enforce punishments, confirm rules, protect neglected children, and define scope. So, a lot of provisions were there within the Female Infanticide Act, which was passed in 1870. Applied to the northwestern provinces, Awadh, Agra, Punjab. So, these were the main provinces where Female Infanticide Act was applied thoroughly. Awadh saw coercive enforcement into early 20th century. Age of Consent Act 1891. Background and resistance. So, problem of child marriage. This act was in regard to the practice of child marriage, which was very much common in India. So, post 1857, British hesitant about reforms. In 1860, law banned consummation before the age of 10. So, uh, anyone below the age of 10 cannot be married off according to the law which was made in 1860, and this happened post 1857 when Britishers were not wanting to get involved in the religious customs of India. Behramji Merwanji Malabari, who lived from 1852 to 1912, was key reformer. He was the key reformer. He wrote Malabari Notes in 1884 against child marriage and widowhood. So he wrote a lot of things regarding the age of consent. He was very much against child marriage and widowhood. The Act of 1891 raised the consent from 10 to 12. So, age of consent was raised from 10 to 12. It outlawed consummation before the wife turned 12. So, before the wife turning 12, she was not allowed to consummate the marriage. Amrit Bazar Patrika opposed the act. Indian Mirror supported it. So again there were controversies. Two sides of people emerged where Amrit Bazar Patrika opposed the act and Indian Mirror supported it. There was an attempt to assassinate Bipin Chandra Pal, who was another social reformer and a freedom fighter from Bengal. So now there was controversy in Bengal. Then there was nationwide resistance. The bill faced protest across India. Orthodox saw it as British intrusion in socio-religious customs. So this was not at all well accepted across India. Many people protested against the Age of Consent Act, and people did not like the Britishers to interfere in socio-religious customs. While progressive groups supported the bill, conservatives resisted it. The bill triggered nationalist anger as well. So there was nationalist anger against this bill as well. Despite severe opposition, the Age of Consent Act was passed on March 19, 1891. So there was severe opposition, but somehow the Age of Consent Act was passed. Reactions to the age of consent. Now we will see why there was a lot of protest. What was the reaction of the people against the Age of Consent Act? So Bal Gangadhar Tilak and his Pune Sarvajanik Sabha led Maharashtra's opposition starting January 1888. Bal Gangadhar Tilak, one of the biggest freedom fighters in Indian subcontinent, was against the Act of Age of Consent. Through Kreshari and Maratha, he argued girls could marry before puberty but not consummate until after it. So his justification was very simple, that already there was a system that girls could get married before hitting puberty, but they were not allowed to consummate it. So there was no need for the Age of Consent Act according to Bal Gangadhar Tilak, because it was already being followed. So why to bring it up and make a rule in support of it when it is already being followed? Many Bengali newspapers and educated elites opposed the bill, fearing religious interference and foreign control. So many Bengali newspapers opposed the bill and they feared religious interference in the functionalities of Hindu religion. The Brahmo Samaj supported the act, so did Mohammedan Association and Central National Mohammedan Association. However, it is to be said that Mohammedan Association and Central National Mohammedan Association supported it only because it went against Orthodox Hinduism. They themselves were not following it very much. So the age of consent bill polarized public opinion and it was seen as a symbol of Western reformist interference. So this age of consent act was not at all well accepted by the Indians, especially many educated Indians did not support it because according to people like Bal Gangadhar Tilak, already we follow this, so why to make a law against it? While reformists emphasized rationalism and child safety, conservatives defended Hindu tradition and Shastric customs. So there was a fight between reform versus tradition. Despite sharp divisions, the Act stood firm, marking a significant movement in India's socio-legal reform journey. Now we will go through the question answers which will be important in your exam. What were the basic characteristics of utilitarianism? Utilitarianism is a moral and political philosophy founded by Jeremy Bentham and developed by John Stuart Mill in 19th century Britain. Marriage controversy. Uh, Discuss the role of Mahatma Jyotiba Phule in the field of social reform movement in Maharashtra. Jyotiba Phule, 1827 to 1890, worked for the upliftment of lower castes, women, and oppressed classes in Maharashtra. In 1851, Phule and his wife Savitri Bai started the first school for girls in Pune, challenging orthodox norms. In 1873, he founded the Satya Sodhak Samaj to promote social equality and reject Brahmanical dominance. Phule criticized the caste system and opposed the idea that Brahmins were divinely superior. He also encouraged widow remarriage and fought against child marriage and female infanticide. His key works include Gulamgiri and Shetkaryacha Asut, where he exposed the plight of lower castes and farmers. He led the foundation for anti-caste and social justice movements in Western India. Discuss the contributions of Narayan Guru in the field of social reforms in Kerala. Narayan Guru was one of the most significant social reformers in Kerala addressing caste-based discrimination. He led the SNDP Yogam, which provided a platform for the Echavas and other backward castes to demand dignity and equality. He broke religious barriers by setting up temples where all castes could worship, including the Aruvipuram temple. Guru emphasized education as a tool of empowerment and supported schools and learning centers for backward communities. He rejected ritualism, promoted inner purity, and preached values based on logic, compassion, and spirituality. He condemned the Brahmanical monopolization of religion and urged people to create their own religious paths. His message of equality continues to shape Kerala's progressive social fabric. Discuss the nature of caste movement started by Veerasalingam Kandukuri. Kandukuri Veerasalingam 1848 to 1919 was the pioneer of caste-based social reform in Andhra Pradesh. Born in Rajamundry, he passed matriculation in 1869 and worked as a teacher, influenced by the Brahma Samaj ideals. He opposed social evils like child marriage, polygamy, and untouchability. He used scriptures to counter orthodox opposition. He arranged the first widow remarriage in 1881 and established a remarriage association to promote the cause. Started the first girls' school in 1874 and another in 1884. Founded the Hitakarini Society for Social Development. He was the first Telugu novelist and historian, and a prolific writer. His journal Vivekavardhini spread reformist ideas. Known as Raja Rammohan Roy of Andhra, he led the foundation for social awakening in Telugu society. Discuss the role of Raja Rammohan Roy for the abolition of sati practice. Raja Rammohan Roy witnessed the cruelty of sati and began a crusade against the practice in early 19th century. He studied Hindu scriptures and proved that sati had no sanction in the Vedas or Hindu Shastras. He published tracts and organized anti sati campaigns. His vigilance team monitored burning ghats to prevent sati. Journals like Sambhat Kaumudi, Friend of India, and Samachar Darpan backed his views against sati. Christian missionaries and British liberals supported his movement and rallied public opinion in England. His efforts led to the passing of Regulation 17 of 1819 by Lord William Bentinck, making sati illegal and punishable. Rammohan Roy's work marked the beginning of modern social reform in India and inspired future generations. How did Iswarchandra Vidyasagar fight for the remarriage of the widows? Moved by the plight of widows, Vidyasagar took the cause of widow remarriage in the mid 19th century. He cited Hindu scriptures in his 1855 pamphlet to prove widow remarriage was not against Shastras. He mobilized public opinion and submitted petitions to the British Legislative Council for legal recognition. Zamindars of Nabadip, Dhaka, Maimansingh, and Maharaja of Bardhaman supported his campaign. Due to his efforts, Act 15 of 1856 was passed under J.P. Grant, legalizing widow remarriage. Though socially resisted, Vidyasagar continued to advocate for the cause until his death in 1891. He is remembered as a fearless reformer who gave widows a new identity and social dignity. Discuss the role of Behramji Malabari in introducing the Age of Consent Bill of 1891. Behramji Merwanji Malabari, 1852 to 1912, a Parsi reformer, campaigned against child marriage and widowhood. In 1884, he wrote two pamphlets called Malabari Notes, widely circulated among Indian and British leaders. He criticized the practice of consummation of marriage before the age of puberty and called it inhuman. His campaign gained backing from newspapers and reformist associations like the Brahmo Samaj and Indian Association. Due to sustained public pressure, the Age of Consent Act was passed on March 19, 1891, raising the legal age from 10 to 12. Orthodox groups, especially in Bengal and Maharashtra, resisted it. Tilak's treasury opposed the bill. Despite opposition, Malabari's work marked a milestone in legal reform and child protection. So that was all about the social reform movements in the early or the late 19th century. We hope that this video brought into light the different rectifications which were done in the Hindu society, starting with Raja Rammohan Rai up until Malabari's Age of Consent Act. Thank you for your support. Support us so that we can bring brighter contents in future. Thank you so much.